Okay, the meeting is called back to order at 6:35 p.m. Please rise and the clerk will lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I please have a motion and a second that the board approves the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Board members, questions or comments? All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed? Can I please have a motion and a second that the agenda of November 28th, 2023 be approved as submitted?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed? Special reports.
We have two amazing special reports this evening. First is district priorities, how our buildings are embedding the district priorities into their work this year. And so we'll have all of our principals here, and I do believe they're going to introduce maybe some assistant principals who are also with us. And then lucky principal Mrs. Watt from the high school is going to stay and do a second special report, which is our annual course description guide presentation to the board. So with that, I'll invite our principals up to the stage, and I'll let you each introduce yourself and your presentation. I will mention too to the board and anyone watching is that Marcy Ware, our principal at Indian Landing, is not here this evening, but she's with us in spirit, and I'm sure is watching at home. But she was unable to be here this evening, but she very much wanted to be here. And as I mentioned, we were asked by our wonderful folks behind the screen here to, if you could use the handheld, because with that many people at the table, it doesn't always pick up the speakers on the table.
We promise we will.
All right, wonderful. Thank you.
So before we get started with our presentation, we wanted to begin with kind of a warm welcome of our own, which is the introductions of all of our assistant principals. So first, thanks for having us tonight. And we'll get started. I guess I'll start, since I've got the mic. I'll start with the high school assistant principals. Tracy Savine, who is here with us tonight, is our freshman class assistant principal. Yeah, stand up. Why wouldn't you? Absolutely. Let's make it real uncomfortable.
Oh, all right.
Mr. Black is with us. He is our special education administrator at the high school. Miss Sick is with us tonight, and she works with our junior class. And not with us tonight, Mr. Menschel, who's working with our senior class, and Dr. Roods, who works with our 10th graders.
Thank you. I will take over and introduce the Bay Trail team. So in the back row over here, we have Mrs. Felice, who is new to Bay Trail, and she is our House C assistant principal. Next to her is Mr. Eccleston, who is our House A assistant principal. And next to him is Mr. Burke, who is our House B assistant principal. And then Jen Lerner, our special ed administrator, is in the back.
Thank you, Rob. And I'm happy to announce Scribner assistant principal, Shawned Vanderswan. And on behalf of Marcy Ware and Indian Landing, assistant principal at Indian Landing, Eric Troggett.
And joining me at Harris Hill is Miss Amanda Spinelli in the back row.
And I'd like to introduce Mrs. Mariana Berry for Cobbles. And on behalf of all the elementary principals, we'd also like to thank all of you for adding that position of assistant principal. It has been an amazing addition. It's great to just have that additional administrator and thought partner in our building, and our students are really benefiting from it, so thank you. So with that, I will get us started. So our presentation is aligned to the district priorities. I got to pass it back down. I get excited.
We're all a little guilty of that, probably, Nicole. So I'll just start with a little bit of framing before we present. Of course, all of the work that we do, our priorities, the commitments that we hold as important to us are all rooted in the culturally responsive and sustaining education framework with your endorsement and support, of course. That leads us into the priorities that we have that are, in truth, ongoing, never-ending endeavors that we have, specifically MTSS and making sure that we have systems in place to review students, their needs around academics, social-emotional needs, behavioral needs. Of course, our grading policies, right? These are all ever-changing to meet the needs of the students who are in front of us. And again, all of the shifts that we're seeing in curriculum and instructional practices. Our community building circles are deeply rooted in restorative practices, which is an ongoing professional development lift that we are all committed to. And then, of course, the social and emotional learning, which just, again, changes depending each year truly on the students that we have in front of us and sort of the needs that they bring to us each year. And so with that, and you've no doubt seen these before, all of the commitments in the long-range equity plan really help all of the decision making in our buildings. So every committee that we have, everything that we do, all of the decisions are really rooted in the reminder of these commitments and what we're trying to accomplish in our buildings. Now, Nicole, we can get to it.
Okay. So what we'd like to talk about is what each of these priorities looks like across the 3 levels. And we're going to start with priority 1. And what I love about priority 1 is welcoming and affirming environments is what we're all about. And what I also love about it is that whether you're a kindergartner or a senior in high school, you're going to see similarities, right? Teachers are standing at the door and they're greeting kids when they're coming in. And they are seeing you and they're talking to you as students. They're creating spaces where they can feel safe and they can feel seen and they can feel heard. So again, whether that's 5th grade can have a quiet, calm corner, and then in the middle school and the high school, they now also have spaces where students can go and have that kind of space. There's the SEL signature practices that are being used across each of the buildings, starting meetings with and starting classes with warm welcomes and engaging practices and optimistic closures. Some of the other highlights is that there is daily SEL instruction at the elementary level again this year for 30 minutes, and that's happening consistently. There's also across all of our levels the SEL screener, which we just received all of our data, and we've been able to sit down and really dig into that data with our mental health team and now share it out with our teachers and start looking at, now that we have that data, how do we use that SEL time, that protected time to use what we know students need now. And some of the other things that we have are, classrooms creating their own rules in the very beginning and their own constitutions, and their, we also have students being part of DEI committees and having a voice. So I think whether, again, where you're at elementary school, middle school, or high school, we're really working very hard all together to really make sure that our students do feel welcome and seen and heard and affirmed. And that really excites me because I think that students are not going to be in the place to learn unless they feel that way. And I think that all of our schools are committed to doing that, and it's really exciting to see that take place at every single school. And with that, I'm going to send it over to priority 2. No, not yet.
I am going to present on Bay Trail's priority number 1. So in terms of SEL signature practices, I'll just add to that. We're starting and ending every meeting. Our teachers are using this in the classroom to get kids engaged from the start. Mr. Burke is the keeper of many warm welcomes, so if you're ever looking for one or you're having a hard time starting a meeting, reach out to him. we just got back, as Nicole said, our SEL screener data, and we're looking to do something mid-year that hasn't been done at Bay Trail in a while, which is take the screener data and do a dot project is a term. It's an activity you do with teachers to identify students who may not have adult relationships, and we want to reverse it and let students also identify who their adult relationships are in the building, who their trusted adults are, and start to find those kiddos who may be slipping through the cracks at Bay Trail that aren't coming to school and don't know necessarily who to go to if they have a problem, and who the teachers aren't connecting with as well. Something else we did this year was took our DEI committee, and I wanted to expand it to become a working group. So in the past, it's operated at Bay Trail like a revolving committee, but more of like a professional learning meeting where parents were sitting on it, teachers, and we would roll out a new initiative each month and introduce it depending on different holidays that were taking place or the priorities of the district. But what I did this year in collaboration with some of my parent leaders was we decided it would be good to make the group working in the sense that when they show up, we identified priorities from our district list that we could implement this year and implement next year in the building. And then we divided that across 2 different subcommittees. And so that group now is meeting monthly and developing projects to improve the physical space and to raise student voice in the building. So that's been fun because there's deliverables coming out of it. Another thing that we did is we partnered with the Levine Center to End Hate this year to address some harmful language that we've seen in the building. I would say some of it may be developmentally appropriate, but also inappropriate in that it's occurring, right? So we see middle school as a space where we want our kiddos to leave socially and emotionally charged, ready for high school. So with the Levine Center, we're utilizing our caring community ambassadors or 8th grade leaders to do a series of workshops where they're gonna push into our flex classes and turnkey with the kiddos different situations and how to address harmful language, how to look for it, and how to disengage from it, whether you're online, in school, or in the community. And then another thing we're doing is working on changing our in-school suspension program so that there's a restorative piece when students are assigned to that. So of course we hope nobody's ever assigned to in-school suspension, but that's gonna happen, it's inevitable. And when students are in there, we wanna make sure that there's a repair happening specifically related to harmful language. So there's an educational piece built in now where we're utilizing our Center for Youth staff member in the building. She's going in and pulling the students to do a 2-hour workshop with them related to the harmful language they used, so that hopefully they can return back into the school and that won't happen again.
The best part about going last is that you've said most of it for me. The one thing that I would just add at the high school, of course, in addition to everything else that's already been said, I guess, is that one of the exercises we did with staff that was really important for us is an adult connection exercise. So every single student in the building, in a single spreadsheet or form really, and every teacher, every staff member in the building identified students that they were connected to, that they felt they had a strong connection with. We reviewed that very carefully to look at how many of our freshmen have 0 connections, how many of our sophomores have 0 adult connections, right? And this is adults saying, we don't know this child well enough to say we have a strong connection. So from there, really, and of course looking at every grade level, challenging staff to say, now go back and look at that and find somebody who has no connections and assign yourself to that student. Make that your person. Make that the person you're going to connect with this year, whether they're in your class, a club, a sport that you coach, whatever that might be. And really with intentionality, trying to forge connections where we now see there may not be one. That sort of overlaid with the SEL screener data is really interesting, of course, to kind of see like how do those things match? How do they compare? Are we seeing the same thing that students are seeing and reporting, or is it different? So again, I think just doing what we do well already, but with intentionality and making sure that there aren't those students that we're missing or that we think are connected, but maybe not be. And especially before they leave this building, right? Once they're gone from here and they move on, we really want to make sure that they have not left here without forging some type of important connection with an adult here.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to priority number 2. At the elementary level, we're really making enrichment accessible to all students. And with that, we have some interest-based enrichment opportunities as well as school-wide enrichment opportunities for all students. And the enrichment teams are working very closely together with Leslie and Maloney to make sure that it's equitable across the buildings as well. There is a focus on asset-based learning. Not only do we talk about social emotional learning during our SEL time in the morning, but it's how that's built into all of our instructional practices. And we utilize some of our district supports in order to come in and kind of say, hey, how is SEL appropriate in math class? Or because it's appropriate in math. How is it appropriate in ELA and social studies? So we're really trying to make sure that those are highlighted everywhere. We have 5th grade leadership opportunities. So we have 5th grade student connections teams that they're building ideas and running with them in the building, so they really can take that leadership opportunity within each of the elementary buildings. We have our WIN interventions, which is what I need. It's taking that spin of RTI, or response to intervention, but really looking at what I need, not just from the intervention kind of where students are lacking in something, but also in how do they grow. So students that need something that could be from enrichment or just a need academically. So we're really trying to change the language and then how we're servicing all of our students. And then, of course, with our IMSE, we're training a lot of our staff, specifically our reading specialists at this time, in a multisensory approach to reading instruction with a focus on phonics. It's a very intense training. I attended it myself. It's 5 days, but it is very eye-opening on how we're teaching reading, and every reading professional that I've talked to about it has said they have learned so much from it. I was blown away. It was absolutely fantastic. I feel like I can teach reading now, even though I can't. But it's just a really great program, and I know that they're seeing a lot of gains when we talk in our day-to-days monthly, what they're seeing in their students, and we're able to get students what they need via reading instruction, but moving them in and out very easily. It's really focused and targeted.
At Bay Trail, we also did a reorganization of our enrichment, looking for opportunities to bring students in that may not have entered Bay Trail as enrichment students, but who may have an interest in exploring some new content that they may be interested in. So we freed our teachers up throughout the day so that they can pull those students and allow them the opportunities to explore things of interest to them. We also have our 6-8 teachers our teacher leaders are currently working to align their grading practices both across their department and across multiple departments, because we don't want students to receive a different experience depending on who your teacher is, but we also don't want you to receive a different experience on what homework is graded like from math to social studies when you go from one classroom to the next. So we're trying to align those things. As 612, we're looking at standards-based grading and focused in on how we can approach our grade books with a standards focus. And then we are also doing some work right now, specifically in December. I'm pulling 7th grade social studies, and we're going to start exploring our curriculum and thinking of how we can rewrite it to make it both culturally relevant but also asset focused for our students, getting away from maybe some rote practices, and how we can help students see themselves a little bit more in the curriculum while maintaining that rigor that exists already.
I'll just focus on a couple of areas, the first of which is increased AP opportunities. I'll talk a little bit more about that in my next presentation as I go through the course guide. A second piece that I just want to highlight is our review of the extracurricular code of conduct. So that's kind of a long overdue for us after having reviewed and updated the new code of conduct and support, the extracurricular code of conduct. So anybody who plays a sport, anybody who's part of a club, there's sort of currently a different set of rules that exists that we need to take a close look at, because it does have a big impact on students, including things like eligibility to participate based on your grades. So we're taking a close look through our DEI committee as well as our shared decision-making committee at sort of how does that align to our current code of conduct and support, and what changes need to be made to make sure that that's kind of more up to date and reflective of what our priorities are as a district.
There we go. The old kid on the block here is going to talk about priority 3, inclusive curriculum and assessment. So one of the things we're doing in this realm is our second step curriculum at the K-5 level. We have our social workers and school counselors providing instruction in classrooms with that curriculum. And 1 out of 5 days, our classroom teachers are using the SEL block to deliver those lessons as well. all of our schools have up and running very productive DEI building-based teams that do include parental involvement. That is evolving. We're all at different levels, and we have plans to try to integrate over the 6 schools what are each of us doing, and instead of replicating things, developing things and sharing them cross-district so it can benefit all of our families, all of our staff, all of our children. Data days take place. That is scheduled through the directors in the Office of Curriculum and Instruction. We're looking at student data. We're looking at students being fluid in what they need via the win time and RTI. And that is a process where it's groupthink and making sure students that have particular needs are getting those needs met in a strategic way. And we continue as a district to evolve and grow as learners ourselves through some book studies, Grading for Equity, as well as the Writing Revolution book study through our instructional leadership team and our directors for ELA and STEAM.
Thank you. So a big priority for us this year at Bay Trail has been redesigning our MTSS process, or our multi-tiered support system, for how we're identifying learners who may need some extra help. And one of the ways we're doing that is across the building. We're starting to define what it looks like at Bay Trail and aligning it as well with the high school. So Mrs. Watt and I have been in conversation about what they're doing, and I've looked at some of what's happening at the elementary school, so that our students, when they're passed on from elementary to middle school and from middle to high, they're not going to get lost in that shuffle, and they're going to continue to get those necessary supports. We've done ongoing curriculum writing with a focus on making it culturally responsive. I mentioned social studies already. That's something we're actually doing during the year because we saw a need as we were progressing through our content to kind of take a pause, pull teachers, and think about creative ways that we can address that. We are continuing to meet with teacher leaders throughout the spring, where we're going to do revisit our Harvard workshop we did last year on Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, looking at strategies to engage all learners in instruction. And one of the other examples is our math department on here, who is working with Kim Gebhardt, our director of STEAM, reading together the Building Thinking Classrooms book to address ways that we're approaching instruction in math.
I'll just talk a little bit more, I guess, about MTSS. It's one of the things I think that I am most proud of in our building right now in terms of a systems approach to being able to quite plainly make classes accessible to all students. So what is the right program? What is the right class? What is the right extra help? What is too much extra help? Really having a sound approach that's consistent. We meet every single week and talk about a lot of kids. And really try to circle back in a really careful way to make sure that we're reviewing how any intervention we're using is helping a student, whether it's time to pull back, add more, and thankfully with all of the additions with things including our tutoring center, alternative education, all of the interventions that we have, it's making that possible. Now when we meet, we have options. We have places to go and things that we can do to help students to make sure that they are accessing their education here with us and not having to go elsewhere to be able to do that.
And before I get to priority 4, I'll piggyback on what Leanna just said regarding MTSS, because I think I skipped that for the elementary portion. So this is replacing what some of our schools used to call IST, or Instructional Support Team. The big difference here is we are focused on the whole student. We're looking at social, emotional, behavioral, and academic. We're trying to set measurable goals. We're monitoring those goals. We're providing strategies to providers and to the classroom teacher. We have follow-up meetings, so it's not a conduit to, gee, what's not being achieved and do we need to make a referral, so on and so forth. It's being proactive in trying to put in all of the things that a particular student needs to be successful. So thank you for picking my brain about that. As far as ongoing professional learning and support, professional learning through our faculty meetings has been incredible. Through the Office of Curriculum and Instruction, Equity and Access, professional development center. We are growing and engaged in communal learning and growth every month through strategic, planned professional development via our faculty meetings. In addition to that, the district has done a great job in providing training throughout the district for staff with therapeutic crisis intervention training. That is allowing us to support students, support their safety, but more importantly through protocols, maintaining a well-being and involving the family in that strategic planning to make sure that students are cared for. And we also have done a lot of work over the last few years around restorative practices. That's part of our new re-engagement process. If and when a student is suspended, we are using restorative practices to have that student, have other students, families involved with staff to make sure that everyone's in a good place to be set up for success as they come back to school. And lastly, what I just want to say is, you know, all of these efforts, all of these priorities are intentionally interconnected in some way, shape, or form. And I think that really sets us apart from many other districts in our region.
Thank you. And something that I will add that I'm proud of from Bay Trail is this year we've done, in the spring, some pivoting based on the needs of our staff and our students. One example that's up there right now is Mrs. Felice overlooks our E&L department at Bay Trail, and we've had an influx of E&L students. And our teachers came to us and said, I want some PD around this. I want to be the best teacher I can be, and that means I need to learn some new strategies. And we've done some pivoting as a building and prioritizing that and offering professional learning this winter to those teachers so that, again, we can meet the needs of our students as they come to us. So proud of that work, but I'm also proud that of the combining our leadership department. Leslie's helped us with that so that our teacher leaders are hearing a consistent message across the middle school and the high school. So 6-12 doing a lot of aligning, and our focus on professional learning has been the same.
I guess I'll just focus on, you know, with all the professional learning we do, one of the biggest challenges I think for where we sit is figuring out how do you demonstrate the value added, right? How do you operationalize it? How do you kind of make it work for you in your building? And I think one of the pieces that I would focus on is our new re-engagement, you know, process at the high school. We spent a lot of time over the summer with huge support from Tracy Savine in sort of working forward with the restorative practices ideas and the committee's, you know, sort of vision for what that should look like. After all of our staff are going through lots of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 restorative practices training, we realized that we really could be doing a much, much better job at re-entering a student when they're suspended. To make that feel different, not like it's punitive, and really trying to welcome them back. Everything from the space that we do that in, it's not in an office anymore, it's in a classroom with flexible seating. Administrators don't even run it, they are participants in it, so that all of those conversations can be had with more objectivity and a little bit more of like a path forward. So I think that is one of, like I said, the challenges. We continue to try to work through community building days for the same reason. Building capacity among our teachers to try to kind of put into action all of the things that we are learning all the time in our professional development. And so with that, unless anybody has anything else, that's really the bulk of the presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. Board members, questions, comments?
A comment, but no question. Go ahead, Mark. You
Go
can
ahead,
always have
Nicole.
something.
Do you want, I don't care. No, we'll go Nicole.
Would
then
someone
Mark.
else have?
Okay, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
There's so much that could be said here. I guess the first thing I'm going to actually ask is a question about elementary school SEL. You know, I think this is the second year. It was a big initiative to get it all in the morning, get it all aligned. And, you know, of course, it's an evolutionary thing. You've got data. So how, you know, in terms of, let's say, the maturity curve, how are we doing? And, you know, are we getting things narrowed down? Are we still making changes as we go throughout, you know, first year, second year, and then looking into the next year?
I think one of the things we're doing now is we are trying to incorporate not just having the classroom teachers run the SEL block or circles, but we're trying to get, our integration specialists, Laura and Anjali, have done a great job with inserting themselves into this, and we're trying to also connect other support providers, special areas teachers, trying to find coverage for them, because we want to build a capacity to have our students globally have more trusted adults than just the classroom teacher that's in front of them delivering that SEL instruction or that restorative circle.
One of the things that we just talked about, because we actually looked at our data right before break, is our teachers started saying, you know what, can we do RTI or WIN for SEL just like we do for math and reading? Now that we have this data back, right, and we know that these particular students are saying that they're having a difficult time with emotion regulation, can we, pull a group during that SEL time, and whether it be, our school counselor or school psychologist or a classroom teacher, or, it could be anybody, right? And we could do special groups with them during that time. So that's one of the things that we're starting to explore, and going to put on the agenda for elementary cabinet next week, because I think just like you said, Mark, as we begin to do more and we know more, I think we can start to differentiate even more. Because I think just like in academics, not all the kids need the same things, I think what we do know that they all need sort of like the anti-bullying, those kinds of things. And there are some of the lessons from Bavona that are required by the state. So those are definitely a time that can happen. But I think that we will continue to evolve our SEL time, which I think is, I think that that's a really good opportunity for us that we're looking forward to. Do you want to add? Yeah.
And then I just have the one comment, which is, again, thank you for, all the work you've done to put this in place. It's very valuable. It's valuable to present it to us, but I think it's also valuable in this meeting because, there's a lot here. There's a lot of structure. There's a lot of thought, and it's not always visible to the general public. I think some people think all you do is just kids go into school, you teach them class, and that's that. Other people think that there's this big cloud of fluff that goes on, and it's just busy stuff. But here, what you've done is you've really shown how we have structure around our priorities and how it's vertically integrated from elementary to high school. So parents could look at this and say, here's our priorities, and here's how you approach it for their student that in their specific level. And I think that's very valuable for our community.
Well, and I think kudos to senior cabinet because they're really the ones that give us that structure and framework, if you will, and that gives us the floor plan to really work from. So it's a good team effort.
Thank you.
Question for Mrs. Watt. You talked about students who don't have any adult connections. So do most students respond positively when an adult begins to reach out? I'm envisioning sort of a teenager that doesn't want to admit a need. Like, why are you looking at me?
Why are you talking to me now?
Yeah.
It's a good question. It's fair. They're a little more dialed into that. So what we really were aiming for was where is there a natural intersection with that child that you're able to forge an authentic connection, right? Are they in your class this year and you've never had them before? And so that's a great opportunity for you to be able to engage differently, ask more questions, have them take more leadership role in your classroom. So yeah, we are looking for not kind of seeking them out in the building and trying to introduce yourself awkwardly, but where is there a natural point that you could kind of draw them in and have some different types of conversations?
And a follow up to that, would that be like what percentage, a tiny percentage of kids who don't have that connection or a large?
Also a good question. So as you would expect, our freshmen have the least in our building, right, because they've only been here a few months. And our freshmen, right, have a very small pocket of students who were not identified, but that's very concerning to us, right, that they've been here for 4 years, right? And so how is that possible? Well, almost 4 years, right? But how is that possible? All the more reason, right, before they leave here that we have to change that. We have to make a concerted effort to try to change that for them.
I'll just add, the same thing happens at Bay Trail. So we saw with our SEL survey data, our sixth graders are the ones least connected in the building. And so as we talked about that, we said, well, how do we push clubs on these students? How do we push sports on these students? How do we find committees for them to sit on? Because that's the only way we're going to get them to maybe find those people if they're not creating the space and the opportunity for it. We've looked at having clubs before school, during school, after school, getting really creative so that we can help those students find those connections.
I have a question. Thank you for all that you do. This work is not easy, it's not light, and it takes a lot of heart and dedication. So thank you so much. I think someone mentioned about the restorative practices and how we've been doing that in the district a lot more. Like Liana, you spoke about there's a dedicated space, right? Are there dedicated spaces in every building where where a restorative practice interaction can happen? And like, what does that look like?
I don't know that we have dedicated spaces. I think it depends on the students involved in the situation. I think we try not to have it in our offices because that's more of a formal, maybe intimidating type of a situation, but somewhere where the kids feel comfortable and it's a neutral ground. So as far as a dedicated space, we don't. But we try to have it somewhere where everyone's on the same playing field.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Okay.
I have a question. I recently had a situation in a classroom, and so we did it just right in the classroom. And so, the kids are used to, the teacher said, okay, circle up, and they're so used to it that they all kind of know, they all kind of have their seats. And so I would say, at least in elementary, the majority of them take place in the classroom, at least at couples.
And I think one of the things that's really important to acknowledge is that there are many purposes for restorative practices, right? So the community building where they're circling up on a regular basis, and then what I think Principal Watt was referencing was re-engaging a student when they return from suspension. So that designated space then outside of the main office does feel a little less intimidating and supportive. But I think naturally in each one of our classrooms, we are building that community so the space is the classroom.
I love that. I love that. And I just have one more thing. It is so valuable for each student in our district to be seen. And I really appreciate the work being done around that. It's just, and when they feel seen, they will go out into the world and see others. As simple as you pull up to Burger King, you look at the person's tag like, hey Dan, could I get whatever we ordered at Burger King? I get ice cream. So, and Dan, a Whopper, thank you. That's right, Impossible Whopper. I mean, so like, and Dan's like, okay, she sees me, right? She took the few seconds to read my name tag, and she sees me, and thank you. So when our students are seen and validated, it's wonderful, because also we don't know what's going on in the rest of their lives. So at school, they're seen. This is their safe space, and I really appreciate the non-creepy way of seeking out our students and having that natural connection, because, I can just picture it, just a teacher sliding. I'm like, hey, what's your name? How you doing? Yes, so really, and understanding that SEL there are certain things that are fixed, the anti-bullying, these certain lessons, but also it's very fluid, and you have to be able to be flexible with the people in front of you, right? So I appreciate, and flexibility it's not easy. It's not an easy skill to practice, and I really appreciate your practice in that. Thank you.
Can I just comment on that? I think I'd give kudos to all of our principals, but specifically when you talk about knowing names, our elementary principals here, and Mrs. Ware is not here, walking through our elementary schools, it's amazing because they know every name. And the students know that they know their name, and they might fake it every once in a while and pretend they know the name, but for me walking in, they do. It's really amazing and powerful. I was in Mrs. Whitehead's office the other day, and there's like a little prize, she can explain it better, but a prize thing if it's your birthday. So the kids just stop down. And just to see the students who, she calls into the office just to say hello to quickly, that's that power. And knowing that our principals, know students' names, take the time, it's really a powerful thing. But as a parent of a kindergartner, you see it. I mean, they light up when adults know their name, not just the classroom teachers, but others. And that connection is really, really powerful. And it's a little different at the secondary level. It's not necessarily birthday prize buckets, but it's still that piece of the principal knows who I am. And it really is a powerful, powerful piece.
So, Mrs. Whitehead, did I hear you have like a birthday bucket?
See me.
My birthday's in July.
I'm doing all the summer birthdays in June.
Okay.
We give out birthday water bottles.
Sorry to take that out. All right, we'll take, don't worry. We'll do a tour. We'll do a tour of Cobbles.
We'll be in line.
Yeah.
I just have a comment. I'm not going to ask a question. First of all, I just want to thank you for your tireless efforts. I think what stood out the most is everything is rooted in our district commitments and priorities. And I heard K-12 alignment across the board. I heard students first over and over and over again. I heard student voice. I heard student being agents of change. I heard making connections. And as Krista said, it really is all about relationships. If we can teach kids to connect to other people, the world that we live in would be a much better place. So I don't know, just given where we live and how we live, that just makes the world a better place. So thank you for showing that and modeling that with the kids. But then I also heard enrichment and equitable and asset-based grading for equity. And then also as teachers, we just talked about this, about how it's so important as educators that we need to be lifelong learners, and you're all doing that. So thank you for modeling for all of the kids here in the district, as a parent, as a board member. Just thank you for everything you do. To your assistant principals, thank you. I know it's a huge team effort, and I know we have a great district office team as well. So I just really thank you for taking our district priorities and make them come to life. We know it's not easy, but we appreciate what you do.
I could go on and on, but I really don't want your heads to get too big over there. No, I really do not mean that. That was just a joke. I'm very grateful for all the work that you've done. And when it comes to the students connecting with the adults, that is something that really travels well into adulthood. We as adults know how important it is. I remember I worked at Gannett Newspapers right out of high school, and Eugene Dorsey was the publisher. And one time, it was more than one time, I was in the elevator with a group of people that I worked with, and he walked into the elevator, and he said, "Hi, Catherine. Hi, Leanna. Hi, Rob." There were 5 or 6 of us, and he knew all of our names. And that, it's decades later, and I remember that exactly. So what you're doing now is it'll transcend. And I think what Christin was saying too about that connecting, it's a powerful tool for those connections, and we need a lot more of that. And you're doing it, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate your presentation tonight. Thank you so much.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming, and thank you for, sharing with us all that you do for our kids. Same thing everyone else said, but I would add that, adding those opportunities for kids to be seen and heard, in the elementary school. I'm excited to see, what it looks like in the middle school. And then at the high school, when you ask and find if they have connections, how many of those kids who were a part of this in the elementary school, I think it'll be a lot different, when we look at it in the future. So I'm so excited and grateful that you all are putting these things into place. It's going to make, like everyone said, a huge difference. So thank you so much.
So before we let them go, you know I can't sit in front of a microphone and not say something. But I want to point out everything that they presented. I love the focus on students and student focus and student need. But I will just say that we all know here, especially at this table and in the audience, that like public education is a very difficult job that has only become more difficult post-COVID in the world we live in today. And this team of leaders here and those who weren't able to be with us tonight and our APs in the audience, the commitment they have to putting students first is just clear every single day. It's stressful. It's not a job that you can show up in 9 to 5 and clock. There's no clocking in and clocking out to be any job in public education, especially our building leaders. And you know, it's late nights and bringing work home, and unfortunately getting calls sometimes on weekends and evenings and holidays, because we don't deal with machinery and cogs in a wheel. We deal with students who, are dealing with things even when they're not with us, and it all comes back into our school and how we can support them. But I will at least say, I think you saw from the beginning of the presentation and some of the comments during it, this group also has an incredibly healthy sense of humor. And I don't think that this job is easy if you aren't able to have some camaraderie, have some compassion, and have a little bit of fun as you go through. And I can tell you, if you talk to any student in the district, they probably think these folks have the easiest job because they make it look easy for the students. And that's really what I'm always honored to be in this district for. And I just thank you very much for your time tonight. Please make sure that you buy coffee for your assistant principals who showed up this evening to support you. And I really do appreciate it, so thank you very much.
And we all appreciate you and your leadership and vision.
Thank you.
And thank you all too. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, good night.
Thank you. You are all more than welcome to stay for Mrs. Watt's presentation, but I will not at all be upset if you also take this opportunity to head home to your own families.
They're like, you got this.
They dressed like me to show their support.
Aw.
You can get 2 Whoppers, but I won't get one.
Thanks, Scott.
Are they still talking about Whoppers?
Nicole.
For your birthday, right?
As we,
Is this
as we
acceptable now?
transition and give a couple minutes just for our administrators to head home, just again, I appreciate the board's commitment. When we talk about our district priorities that are set by the board, and then our principals, connecting their plans to what the board has put forth, I really do appreciate it. And you heard, I think they're very genuine when they talk about that support for the Board of Education, so thank you. So our second special report tonight is Mrs. Watt, who's going to go over our course description guide. You've got the clicker. You're good to go.
I do. I just need to make sure the clicker is working, which it's not, right?
Is it, there's an,
Let's see.
Battery dying.
No, it's on. Let's try again. Oh. Still no.
Dr. Driffill's going to deliver you another one.
I appreciate that.
If not,
Oh, it's frozen. Did it just
wait,
freeze?
let's see. You know what? No, we can't. I think it's frozen.
Would you like my computer?
I think it's got, hang on, we've got to make sure it's,
Trying to connect. Oh, I just saw the mouse. Oh, I see
Did
now.
everybody's freeze or just that computer?
It's,
Oh.
there it is.
Okay.
sometimes our principals have to observe teachers. I observe principals.
That's right. That might be right now.
Sometimes, like there's a technology
Glitch.
fail or
Mhm.
glitch, and it's always really about what
Sorry.
the person does,
So did
right?
you set this up?
Who's testing me?
Mrs.
There you
Watt
go.
might have set this up to, see, she was very cool. She didn't freak out.
I would have done it without it, just to be clear.
I believe it, but
Okay.
now you've got visuals.
I would have
Beautiful.
given you my computer.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I'll try to be brief about this because although there have been a lot of changes over the years to the course guide, this year is sort of an exception where there are few changes. So I'll try to go through this and highlight some of those. Our goals have remained the same in the development of our course guide, which of course completely feeds the master schedule development, which in a high school is kind of a beast of a job, right? It's a year-long process that we go through, and this is step one. What are we offering for students to be able to take? So our goals are really to increase access as much as possible, reduce conflicts for students, and to really be able to maintain rigor, offer those opportunities that are dual credit as much as possible, really focus on all post-secondary goals and options for students, right? Not just those that are college, and really making sure that we are preparing students for whatever it might be that is next for them. And of course, with the obligation to be fiscally responsible in some of those choices that we're making. In practice, what that looks like is really making sure there aren't redundancies in some of our course offerings. We're not creating conflicts for ourselves. And I know we talked about this a little bit last year, what it means to have a singleton, right? What that does to a schedule. To have one section of something offered in the whole day, right, can be very difficult when you're trying to build a schedule and allow students access to that class, right? Because it ends up competing against something else always. So trying to build those sections so there's not just one chance during the day. And again, of course, taking a look at the enrollment trends. What are some of our classes that maybe are not as highly enrolled as opposed to some new offerings that we're having? What can we be maybe thinking differently about and introducing differently? So this is really just kind of an example, just so you know what our incoming 9th graders see when they work with their counselors, right? Our current 8th grade students, when they work with their counselors, they have a form in front of them which allows them to really go through what is available to them when they're going through the scheduling process, which is about to happen, believe it or not, right? Some of our students will start that in December or January and start having some of these conversations. So they'll go through each discipline and start making some choices, and you'll see that the choice for them really increases as you go here, including once they get into world languages, and then again with some of the elective options that they have to accomplish that one required art music course that they need, and I'll talk a little bit more about some of the changes with that as well. So our 9th graders will be incoming 9th graders will be doing that before long. In art, there aren't changes to our art offerings. We are going to step away this year in the rotation and not offer AP Theory, or AP Art History course, We didn't run it last year. We weren't able to fill it, and so they wanted to take a break and offer some other electives that they are finding to be more popular and students are taking. And that's really based on them surveying students and saying, like, what is it that you're interested in taking? What should we be offering to make sure that we're filling some of those sections? And there's a lot to choose from, which is something we're pretty fortunate to have available. In business, I've really just highlighted here some of the upper level classes, of course, where students can get dual credit. One piece that I want to highlight, that career and financial management class, you may or may not know this, that it's very likely going to be the case that the state will require all of our students to take that class. We're not quite there yet. It's probably coming down the road, and so we're exploring a lot of our sections and what would it take to do that, how much more staffing would that need. We took a look at the numbers, and by the time our seniors this year graduate, we'd have already about 130-ish students who will have already taken that class out of our seniors. So we're not too far off the mark. It would take some more sections to make that happen should that become a requirement, but they have 4 years to do it, right? It doesn't all have to happen at once. So we're kind of keeping an eye on that piece. English, this was the first year that we offered the pre-AP2 opportunity for students in 10th grade. It's going extremely well. I'd say that the teachers are really appreciative of having some common planning time and some release time occasionally to remain on the same track and to really talk about and review how things are going, given that it's a brand new course. Again, plenty of upper level opportunities for students to take, with many, many, many elective options for students in their senior year. No changes to health, right? Those requirements remain in place, right? Health 1 is a state ed requirement, and Health 2 a board policy, right? That students have that second health course. And Reconnecting Youth, we work closely with Delphi to make sure that that course is offered. That's based on sort of a recommendation by counselors as well as administrators to make sure that if there are students who are a little bit more at risk based on sort of some of the experiences that they've had or again, signs of use that are happening, it's a very specific course for students to take that really is meant to be preventative if at all possible. One change in our music offerings, which is exciting, before this year, our voice class was not a class that counted towards one of those sort of required music credits. So students who might be coming to us wanting to take voice, we're having to make some different decisions because it wasn't counting as that required credit. We've been working this year with state ed to make that adjustment, which basically required us ensuring that our standards in that course aligned with the required standards of the state. And to make that an available option now to students will be really helpful and will only kind of open more doors for students in taking some other classes down the road as well. We're still offering our studio recording and sound engineering class. I bring that up because it was an expensive investment to be able to have all of that equipment and accessibility to students. It's sort of a niche group who participates in that, but it's very, very popular, and we're excited to offer that again to students next year. No significant changes in math. Of course, what you see there with the asterisks there are all courses that have a Regents exam connected to them. But again, many, many options in math with lots of opportunity to sort of challenge yourself all the way up through senior year. Physical education remains the same. I would just highlight that by the time students get into 11th and 12th grade, you can obviously several options that they have available to them with electives. One that I would highlight is unified PE is still something that we are offering for students. If you're familiar at all with unified basketball, unified bowling, we offer a unified PE class as well that students participate in that has both special education and general education students working together in that course with a slightly different curriculum. Science, I will just highlight for you some changes that are coming our way, really not until the end of next school year. You're going to notice we're kind of circling back to some old ways with sort of the state ed expectations. You'll notice that Earth and Space Science is currently what you know as Earth Science. The name has changed going into next school year. Another change is biology, right? We know that now as living environment. I took it as biology, but it's back, right? Biology is back again. So those exams will change come next school year. Yes. Next school year, those exams will be new and different for students to take. So along with that are some up in the air details yet. So for example, the lab requirement. There's still conversation about whether or not students will be required to hit a certain number of lab minutes in order to even take the exam, right? Right now, that's a requirement. They have to have been present for, passed, sat through certain minutes for labs in order to even be eligible to take the exam. So that's something that's kind of in question right now, and we'll wait and see what happens. So social studies, some exciting news there is that we will be offering AP African American Studies going into next school year. It's part of our course catalog. We surveyed students to get an idea of what the interest might be. Not only would you take this class, but would you take this class if it were in direct conflict with something else? And the good news is that there were a lot of students who were still interested, roughly 80 students, so still expressed interest. Yes, I would pick this over something else if it were available to me. So we're going to offer that and hope to fill at least 2 sections of it is really the goal to make that available to students. Technology, again, I've just highlighted here some of the classes that are dual credit. Not a lot of changes there, but I do want to highlight one of the new classes that we will be offering this year. It's a Project Lead the Way course, and it's focused on cybersecurity, which again is of very high interest for students, kind of detecting what those threats might look like, how do you prevent those things from happening, and it's kind of a growing career field for students once they leave here. It's part of the sequence, it's like an elective option when you're talking about the Project Lead the Way requirements. World languages, again, remains mostly the same. The only thing I would add is although you see AP Spanish and you don't see AP French or German, students, of course, still have the ability to challenge that exam, to take that exam and prep for it, even if they're sitting in one of the college 2 classes. Even though we don't have the AP as a course, students can still take the exam and earn that college credit if they wanted to. Just some quick highlights with regard to special education. As you know, we've been spending a lot of time very carefully stepping out our integrated co-taught model. This coming school year will be sort of the conclusion of that for us. We will finally have kind of worked that all the way through the different grade levels in our building, with the addition of integrated co-taught global 2, right, which is for our 10th graders, our integrated co-taught biology, and our integrated co-taught U.S. history. So those will be the final co-taught classes that we have that round out the special education continuum for us in our building. And of course, for our ENL students, our Ls, that's in terms of course offerings, kind of a moving target, because the co-taught offerings that we provide are entirely based on how they perform on the NYSA slat at the end of this in the spring, right? We get those results sometime in the summer, usually way too late, but we make some good guesses about what the supports the students will need, and really make sure that we have those in place, but that's entirely dependent on how students perform. We continue to work very closely with BOCES, right, in the programming options for students who are interested in vocational opportunities. They have a wide range and continue to build upon those offerings, and at varying levels. So we frequently hear EMCC, but there's also multi-AC in focus, which is important to highlight because it is a different version of this type of programming that's accessible to students who may need it at a slower pace, who may need it more focused and specialized instruction. So we access BOCES programming for a lot of reasons, and so we're really very fortunate to have that partnership. So the next steps, next week we'll start, believe it or not, with a PTSA presentation that's all virtual for families 8 through 11 to hear all about this exact same presentation and kind of what they might expect through the scheduling process. What does that look like in each building? And then the recommendation process begins, right, where teachers start making some early preliminary recommendations, but don't worry, people see that and they say December seems awfully early for that. They do it again. They do it again come spring because things change, and they say, you know what, maybe this student can try that, and maybe they should think about doing this. So we come back to it and cycle back through it, and have lots of opportunities for students to learn all about the options that are available to them. And seminars, of course, during course awareness days, the elective fair, and then we are fully into the scheduling process. By February break, we kind of know what we need, right? How many sections? How much staff? What will it take to make it all go? That's how I spend February break. So that's a lot. Can I answer any questions for you?
Board members, questions, comments? Mark?
There was a time where we would offer things in the summer to help make more room for students to do with all the things they want to do. And I think one of the things was health at one point.
Yes.
Are those kinds of opportunities still presented?
Yes. So there's 2 ways that we do that. One way is through BOCES. So BOCES will promote, these are the classes that we're offering as repeat courses, like a student did not pass them and they're repeating it, and classes we are offering as new. Those classes are typically like politics, economics, half-year courses that are easier to complete during the summer time frame because it is quite a lot to fit into that period of time. We also, in-house, as I call it, offer some of those health classes. We offer a limited number of sections of those because we really prefer that students do that during the school year and get the full course, right, as much as possible because it's heavy topics that we're talking about. We do that for Health 1 and Health 2. For example, though, if you take Health 1 in the summer, you're expected to take Health 2 during the school year, right? We don't allow students to do both.
Right.
So there are some limitations to that. We also, have expanded summer programming through the alternative education program so that if you're a student who's recovering credit, you can do that at BOCES and here. So instead of only getting 2 credits in the summer, you can possibly get 4. Right, so our students who are really credit deficient and need that catch-up time, we're creating more space and opportunity for that. So there's lots of ways to earn credit during the summer.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sure.
I thought I saw, calculus honors as well as calculus AP. And I thought as a district we were moving away from honors in general. So I guess my question is, why do we still have, and maybe there were other honors that I just didn't see on the screen, like why are we retaining some honors and then what's the difference between an honors, something like calculus honors and an AP calculus?
Sure. So obviously the AP course is vetted through College Board, right? And there's certain requirements, there's certain standards and a curriculum that you have to teach with the AP exam that follows it. Once you get to that level of math, it is quite different, and it really depends on the trajectory for each student and sort of the path that they want to take. The math teachers would tell you that they're very different in terms of the pacing of it and what they're covering, and it really depends on sort of where students go, where they're coming from, what class they took before that, and where they're going after that.
So what would be the advantage of a calculus honors class when the AP class, I don't know how to say it, but.
Yeah. What's the advantage of taking the AP class versus the honors class? With the AP class, you have the opportunity to earn college credit.
And what's the advantage of the honors class?
I think the pacing of it is a little bit different.
It's faster?
No, slower a little bit.
Oh, I see. So, but it's still faster than a regular AP calculus class.
So the calculus honors class is actually a Syracuse
Dual
University
credit, yeah.
SUPA class, and then the AP courses are AP courses. And so oftentimes, depending on what a student is looking to do after high school, depending on the college that they're looking to go to, some students will choose the SUPA course because that you don't have to take an AP test. You get the score, you get your final grade, you transfer the transcript from SUPA into your college. The other piece is because we offer an accelerated program, we are one of the only districts, I'm going to say one of, I'd really like to say the only, in the county that offers Calculus 3. So many students will take the AP courses in order to be prepared for Calc 3. The calculus honors, the math teachers would say, as a former math teacher, I would say the calculus honors class probably wouldn't have you as well prepared for Calc 3 as the AP courses.
But there's still enough reason to keep having it. It's still valuable enough to keep having it.
There's
Yes,
sections
absolutely.
every year.
Absolutely. Again, it really depends on what you're planning to do next. That's really what makes the difference.
Other questions?
I don't have a question, just a comment. I would just like to commend you on really two things. I heard kids' interest over and over again, whether that was through the surveys that you're doing and just getting the student voice of what you would like. Would you take this course, even if it was conflicting with another course? And just the fact that you're being so proactive with the career and financial management, I think that's awesome planning. A lot of people, go in after, oh, now we got to do this. Like, we're ready when the state says, now we got to do this.
We
So I
want to
think
know
that's
how
awesome.
many, sections, how many FTEs, what does that mean for us, right? And where's sort of the give and take of that when you look at it in totality with all of your building staffing. So,
Yeah, no,
thank you.
I love it.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you for
and
listening to me twice.
presenting. You did a great job.
Thanks. Thanks. Appreciate it. Have a good night, everybody. Anything else, Dr. Putnam?
No, I guess, I might take back buying coffee for your APs because they didn't stay.
I
to
know they
watch you do
didn't.
that.
Listen, they've been here a
They
long
may need
time.
to
They've been
buy
here,
you
I know they've been here a very long time.
Half
so.
of them are sick.
That's true. No, thank you very much. I think the way that we look at that course description guide, I'm just always in awe with in terms of just piggybacking in terms of the students. Many years ago, it was much more what adults wanted to teach,
Sure.
and then here are the options. And it's been a long time since we've looked at it like that, but really trying to build what students actually want to take, especially for the electives in those areas. I also think you referenced it, but when we look at low languages other than English, not having the college level and an AP, it really comes down to staffing and those class sizes being very small, but not saying, sorry, there's no chance. The fact that students can still take the college level and then challenge the AP exam is a huge benefit of trying to, do more with less sometimes.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Most definitely.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, of course. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Would you like another special report, or that concludes special reports?
Go for it. Thank you so much. Hi, Helen. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Helen, do
Good.
you have your courses signed up? Because you just got the presentation, so.
I do.
Oh, awesome.
Good for you.
Awesome.
Always one step ahead.
Super excited to take studio recording next year.
Oh, all right, there you go.
When she talked about the niche, that was me.
Oh, that's great.
In terms of district-wide updates, I'm sure that you all know that everybody in the district enjoyed days off for Thanksgiving break. At the high school, the varsity hockey team invited students in 3rd through 8th grade to participate in a hockey skills clinic and pizza party on Wednesday of last week. And on Friday of this week, we will see a workshop and concert with the guest artist Moxie Strings through the orchestra. And the robotics team is hosting a trivia night on December 9th, and anybody can register a team of up to 7 people for a night of facts and fun. Students attended the Early Recognition Black Scholar celebration by the Urban League of Rochester, and the hockey game played their first game of the season tonight at Bay Trail. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week will be the 8th, 7th, and 6th grade winter concerts, respectively. Many students are going to the planetarium for a field trip tomorrow, and more are gearing up for a field trip to see Garth Fagan dance next week. And with the beginning of colder weather, the Gingerbread Club has also started, and students are crafting awesome gingerbread creations after school with Mrs. Lederhouse. At Scribner, there will be a 4th grade field trip to the high school in conjunction with the Moxie Strings workshop. And at Cobbles, kids and teachers through all grades marched into Thanksgiving with the Cobbles Macy's Day Parade. At Indian Landing, Miss Page's kindergarten class baked pumpkin pies on Tuesday to celebrate Thanksgiving. And at Harris Hill Academy is looking for adult volunteers to share a special talent for an academy session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Superintendent.
Oh, yeah, okay, superintendent reports. Helen, that was great. I can just tell you that, can't help it, but as a parent of a kindergartner at Cobbles, that Macy's Day Thanksgiving parade was huge. And so I will give kudos right now to Mrs. Whitehead, because maybe a certain kindergartner's balloon popped 2 minutes before their parade, and she swooped in and drew the Incredible Hulk on a balloon, and he was very, very happy. But it was very cute, and they actually watched a little bit of like an old parade, and so my kiddo knew all about the parades and was very excited. He watched the entire Thanksgiving Day parade on Thanksgiving, which is what I always do. So it was nice to finally have my older kids were never interested, but he was really excited because he was in a parade. So that lasted about 10 minutes around Cobbles, but it was great. So thank you very much. I don't know where I am. Student staff honors. Helen did a great job. I just have one update, which is Thanksgiving meals. So the Penfield boys basketball, girls lacrosse, and cheerleading teams purchase food and supplies and deliver them to families in need through Primetime 585's annual Thanksgiving program. Some photos there, again, of our incredible students working to give back and support because we are all one community. In terms of updates, I actually don't have any updates, but I can't not just say this. So we talked a lot about social emotional learning in our presentation. So I just want to share a story that today I was at Indian Landing. I started my day there, and I was in a kindergarten classroom. And some of the students in the kindergarten classroom are nonverbal. They can't put words yet to their actions. And they read a book called I'm going to forget what it's called, Scribble Spot. And it's basically the spot of scribbles at all different colors, and every color within the scribble spot is a different emotion. And so we're talking about 5-year-olds who were able to sing a little song or listen to the song that I got to join in on, that little video, and then talk about how they were feeling. And this was during the SEL blog. This is them starting their day and just being able to point out how they were feeling and then for some students were able to articulate a little bit more and others couldn't, but at least that support. So some students were feeling a little scared, and some students were feeling happy, and some were feeling calm, and some were feeling loved. But when we talk about like SEL, this is the stuff that is so small, but it's built in, and the students had obviously done this before because they were able to point out and talk through and help regulate how they were feeling. And it was just a small little thing. It took 10 minutes, but watching our youngest learners be able to sort of put together that how they're feeling impacts how they're acting, and it was really, really helpful. And then to see the empathy of a student who was feeling a little scared and having other little 5-year-olds just say, you know, it's okay, or we're happy you're here. It was really powerful. And again, these are our students in kindergarten, but being able to speak through that. And we all know kids, when they don't have the words to express how they're feeling, then they do that through their actions. And being able to tie, you know, really sort of formally actions to how you're feeling and then to words is really powerful. So as Dr. Roberts mentioned, it's exciting to think that as kids go through, just being able to express how they feel about things as opposed to just their actions. And that's like the heart of some of the SEL work we're doing with students. So it was great, and Scribble Spot is my new favorite. That's all I have for updates, and I will turn it over to Dr. Driffill.
Thanks, Dr. Putnam. Just 2 approval items from my office this evening. The first of which is to approve that budget development calendar for 24-25 that we reviewed at a prior meeting. No changes from that draft version on tonight's final document. And then we also have project bid awards for Phase 2 of our 2021 capital project. So Phase 1 is the new building, the transportation and facilities building. Phase 2, we bucketed. We had the roofing contract a couple months ago for Scribner and Baytrail. We moved that up to take advantage of the good fall weather. That worked out really well. The second part and last part of Phase 2A was this Harris Hill vestibule work that we're awarding tonight. The board and facilities committee really wanted to accelerate that, move it up as a safety priority. So we were able to get those bids for a relatively small project. We have about $1.1 million in awards for your consideration tonight. Had a relatively good bid turnout, good time of year to do it. So we are awarding a general contractor, mechanical, electrical, and then we have controls through state contract. So all in all, Phase 2A is about $80,000 over budget. This portion was about $300,000 over budget, but we were $250,000 under budget on the roofing work. So kind of a wash, all things considered. But yeah, that's it for me tonight. Go ahead.
Could you just repeat that, please?
Sure. So for Phase 2A, we're about $80,000 over budget total. So we're about $250,000 under budget on the roofing work, but we're about $330,000 over on tonight's awards. And keep in mind, those are estimates that are derived from years ago. We're moving into 2024 now. In the grand scheme of Phase 2A, about $2 million worth of work, $80,000 amounts to just a couple percentage points. So it's within our comfort level to bring it forward to a board recommendation tonight. Most of the Phase 2A work will have to wait till summer, just because it's that Harris Hill vestibule. It's it would take most of that building offline, the primary entrance. But we are hoping to get a couple things done, maybe over spring break or into spring. The next stage of our capital project is Phase 2B, so that's a much bigger portion of the work. So that's most of the work here at the high school. So that's the commons, the library, the softball and baseball fields that we'll be working on. So that is currently into SED now. It's being reviewed. We've already gotten some comments back from the Office of Facilities Planning. We're anticipating approval, hopefully early spring. Try to get this out to bid sometime February, March, and have a board recommendation March, April, so we can get going.
Awesome.
And Dr. Roberts, I will yield it back to any discussion or answer any questions.
Questions or comments? Go ahead.
You mentioned 2B and stuff to be done here at the high school.
Yeah.
I can't remember when the new vestibule for the high school, in terms of more security, is gonna be.
Yep, it is part of the 2B package, but I think the construction on that won't be happening until summer of '25. So most of the fields, we'll start the commons, that'll be this upcoming summer. And then library will be mid-year or so, be partially offline during the 24-25 year. And then a lot of the smaller things at the high school will be cleanup work that next following summer.
Why is, I'm wondering why that couldn't happen sooner, because that seems more important, or maybe it's not.
There is already a little bit of a secure vestibule here at the high school, and we have a little bit more of a security presence, obviously with all of our hall monitors and things like that. And we are, working within the parameters of a phasing schedule for construction. There's only so much we could do at first, and there's already a lot of site work going on with all the fields and things like that, that if we were going to take the front of the building offline, that whole corner of, where the parking lot is, I think it would have been just a real challenge just from a viability perspective. I don't know if it was ever explicitly drawn out whether or not we could or could not do it. But I think that those are part of the concerns, is that there's only so much we can fit into one summer.
I think the piece of Harris Hill being this summer for the vestibule was, as Dan mentioned, there aren't hall monitors. There's one hall monitor there, but it's not the presence we have here. But we take safety and security of students obviously very seriously, which is why at the high school there's only that one entrance. Everything is pushed to that main entrance where there is stationed hall monitors right outside the main office. And ultimately trying to prepare the construction packages to go out to bid, it's easier if all the work at one school is happening as opposed to trying to get the vestibule approved now and then the following summer doing the rest of the work. So when we go out to bid and looking for packages and getting the best bids back, when it's all put out together at the same time on the street, that's really helpful. Yeah, but we've talked a lot about the vestibules and the safety and security and making sure that that's always in the key piece to try to make sure that's there. It's a good question. The other thing I would just add, and I know our board knows, but be really clear, when we talk about in the capital projects being over budget, that's all tied to the dollars that were approved by voters for us to use in the capital project. So at the end of the day, if we are over budget in an area, then something comes out of the project. And this is sort of just par for the course for any capital project. We review as we go, but it wouldn't be like tapping into the general fund to pay for the capital project. That doesn't happen. It's just what was approved. And then we would really look to see if we had to, what could come out of the project and be pushed to the next project. We're not there yet. We're not talking about what comes out of things. But being transparent in terms of being over budget in some and under budget, it is like building a house just on a major multi-million-dollar scale that, you might not get every kitchen upgrade you wanted because the bathrooms cost a little bit more than you thought they were going to be. But hopefully in the end, it all comes out in the wash.
I was just going to say, I think my question came out of making sure that safety came before making things nicer.
Oh, absolutely. Yep.
But that makes sense that
Yep.
It wouldn't be too hard for it to happen this coming summer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you talked about over under budget, are you inclusive of contingency or without contingency?
Including.
Inclusive,
Yep.
okay.
Yep. There's a percentage buffer built in, and really all things considered, the project's about $73 million total. Phase 1 was pretty close to budget. Phase 2A is now pretty close to budget. So really, after Phase 2B, once those bids come in, we'll have a really good understanding of where we are in the wider scheme of the project. But so far, so good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
All right, so we
Oh,
are
sorry,
on.
that concludes superintendent reports.
I was waiting, but I
I
just
know you
figured,
were waiting.
yeah. All right, so we're on 6A, okay, the project contract awards. Whereas the Board of Education of the Penfield Central School District solicited bids from prime contractors for construction services in conjunction with its Phase 2A capital improvements project, Harris Hill Vestibule, and whereas the project architect SEI Design Group and construction manager Campus Construction have reviewed the bids and bidders' qualifications for the project, discussed the project with the lowest responsive and responsible bidders, recommended award of the access controls and HVAC controls contracts through the New York State Office of General Services, and by letter dated November 22nd, 2023, recommend award of contracts to the following contractors: General Trades, Maricon Enterprises, Mechanical Work, DG Mesmer, and Electrical Work, Concord Electric. Whereas the Board of Education accepts the recommendation of the project architect and construction manager and determines that it is in the best interest of the school district to accept the bids and award the contracts as set forth in the resolution below. May I have a motion and a second to approve the capital project contract awards?
So moved.
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed? Can I please have a motion and a second that the board approves the 2024-2025 budget development calendar as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed? And now we are policies for first read.
And
Do you want to comment on those?
I'm happy to talk through those if the policy committee would like. I really am ready. I just opened them up to, okay.
Corporal punishment.
Yes. So these policies are, one for the community, and as a reminder to the board, is that the board policy committee does a 5-year review of all policies. We start with Series 1000 and go all the way up through Series 8000. It takes about 5 years. We completed that last year, and so typically, I can say now that in my 10th year that I've been through this 5-year process, and then the board typically takes a year to just look at policies as they come up, as opposed to diving all the way back into a full 5-year review. These policies really are a change from the state. The state cleared some, made sure that we had to update our policies. The really is timeout. We used to have a policy for the use of timeout and then a policy on physical restraint, so they're combined into one policy. We don't typically use timeout rooms, but we still have a policy for it because you never know, and the state does allow timeout rooms, although we don't utilize them. And then the other policy there is clear is corporal punishment, and I just want to be really clear that policy has changed based on legal advice, but please note that the first line in corporal punishment is we do not use corporal punishment, but you are required to have a policy for that. So those are the changes that are in there. Please take a look. They are all aligned to state law and requirements, and appreciate the work from Dr. Potter around both of these policy updates. So they're there until next meeting. They're open. They're up on our website if people want to add or provide any feedback or questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Monroe County School Boards Committees, Labor Relations Committee.
Oh, that's me.
Steve, Dan, and I were there too, so we can jump in, but it was a big team effort there.
I completely blanked on that one. It was good.
Civil service. Civil service.
I'll let you take the lead.
It was a nice presentation. I was joking with Dr. Kenny this morning. I think it was this morning, yesterday. I was really hoping to go, and they would be like, "Here's the solution to civil service." That was not how it went. It was more of an overview of the civil service process for school board members in district. We as district use a lot. HR and Steve definitely are well versed in civil service, but it was a bit of the history of civil service, how it came to be, and the requirements. And that's just really about any of our positions are either certified, like teachers and administrators, and those that aren't certified have to go through civil service. And so there's tests for those. You have to select from the list that you are provided from civil service. There's a lot of bureaucratic red tape that's there. I was reminded, though, that the history of it really is to make sure that it wasn't sort of who you know to get the job, but really having to take a test and be on the civil service list. And some of the history was that way back it used to be the new politician would come in and get rid of the entire staff and hire new folks, and civil service sort of stepped in to say that's not how this works. That was a really bad explanation of civil service, but I think it was a good presentation as a reminder of why it's in place.
Thank you, Tom. Now, do you recall what was the previous system?
The spoils.
The spoils.
Yes.
Spoils, yes. Thanks for Steve. That was Dr. Kenny, but yes.
Yes.
So-
And yeah, thank you, Tom. It was very eye-opening. I mean, anyone who works in anywhere, you know that HR and employment law is complicated, and you have to be very careful, and especially in hiring. Civil service just amps that up just that much more. Not only that, it does restrict the flexibility of hiring. You know, it's in a structured way, so it's intended to be, I don't know what's the word, impartial, but it still is, it still does restrict, you know, the flexibility somewhat. And I think they are making some changes about like residency, you know, it was county-based, and, you know, we've got part of our district's not in the county, so we could technically have community members in our school district that would be ineligible for a civil service job in our district. So I think those things are being remedied. But thank you. It's just, you know, the way we manage those things, for better or for worse. But it's helped us understand it.
There's a lot of advocacy going on right now in the state from a number of groups, including the New York State Administrative Council, or Superintendent Council, really just around trying to get some breaks so we can hire people who really would be great but maybe didn't sit for a civil service test yet, or maybe they didn't score the highest. And that's always a struggle. I understand it, but it's a struggle because the civil service tests don't always align to the job that the person has. Like the civil service test for a grade level clerical don't ask questions about how do you handle a difficult parent on the phone, how do you work through a situation with a student. They're different, but again, anybody in the public sector utilizes the civil service system, and they are helpful. I think Dr. Kenny would share with you. They do pick up the phone when you call.
Yes, they do.
So
They work
that's-
closely with us. We reach out to them just to make sure we're always following the rules. But we all suffer through civil service at times,
But I think,
unfortunately.
I'm sorry, I think the other message out of there was if community members have any interest at all in jobs that are civil service related jobs, you got to take the tests.
Yeah.
I mean, the sooner you take the test, or you have it, then you can be on the list.
Yep.
Versus if you haven't taken the test and the job comes up, it makes it that much harder for you to be a candidate. So, you know, take the test and it gives you, you know, you don't have to apply for a job, but it just gives you another avenue for employment.
I would also encourage anyone who's interested in the position to give me a call, and we can help them work through the civil service process.
Great. Yep.
So it's clear for anybody watching at home, if you're interested in working for Penfield in any capacity, please reach out to HR.
Please.
So Dr. Kenny is always happy
pick up.
to hire folks.
Nice.
So that's my report on.
That was great. Good save. That was good, Mark. Thank you.
All right, there is no unfinished business. Any new business?
Well, I have a question. I can't believe, but I was going to ask Leanna this, and maybe you know, but if not, maybe you could find out.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask her about voice and how they've been working with the state to get that as accredited course. That working with the state how does that work? Do you know, is it just she called somebody at the state, or is it a political, like, advocacy? Is it academic advocacy? How does that work that, you know, they're looking to get that course accredited?
I feel like I have someone down here who's going to answer this question.
Of course.
I could tell.
Of course.
So we're very fortunate. Our directors have fabulous relationships at the state ed level there's content folks at the state ed level. So there's a math person, there's a science person, there's, in fact, the world languages person just came here, gosh, today's Tuesday. She must have been here at the end, right before the break. And so having those relationships, we also are very fortunate. We have teachers who participate in state level committees, whether it be writing questions, state questions for state exams, whether it be doing level setting for the assessments for state exams. And so we connect with I think the music person does art, music, and one other area, and connect and work it through. And if we aren't able to make that connection to state ed, BOCES is always willing to help us make that connection to state ed.
Okay.
So, but we've been very fortunate.
Wow.
Can't remember the last time I had to go through BOCES. So.
You know, Mark and I were on legislative for a long time, and we did that advocacy, and that we've stressed a lot about those relationships.
You're absolutely
Yeah.
right. It's the relationships.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. I didn't know anything about how the process worked, and it was one of those things. It's like, okay, I'll ask her, and then there were, she came and she went, and I'm sorry that I forgot to ask her. But thank you.
Yep.
I really appreciate that.
Yep.
And
All right.
that's all I had.
Any new business? All right. So can I have a motion and a second that the meeting be adjourned at 8:09 PM?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? All in favor, none opposed.